Welcome, Internet Capitalists, to our fourth interview with crypto founders. And today we have Rizz from Ionic Protocol. Welcome, Rizz.
Hey, welcome, or rather, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I just want to jump into this. Usually the first thing I ask everyone is, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you got interested in crypto, things like that?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So I've actually been in crypto for quite some time now. I think late 2020, 2016, sorry, late 2016 was when I first got introed to crypto, or back in the day, it was mostly EtherDelta. I don't know if you remember those times, but yeah, those were the early days of what was supposed to become the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yep.
Before that, a bit of Bitcoin, obviously. But yeah, I remember just thinking, wow, okay, this can really change the world in a big way. I used to trade stocks here and there, like, nothing crazy, but I always had to go through all the KYC, and it was just super complicated. The brokers, everything else, extreme high fees. And then ultimately, I started trading Bitcoin, and I was just like, wow, I can just do this permissionlessly. I can sign up immediately, trade from anywhere in the world. And from that moment on, I realized this was going to massively change the world. So I kind of caught the bug, as some would say. And yeah, I've worked with a bunch of protocols over the last few years. Started off obviously in Ethereum with sort of decentralized marketplaces, and then moved on to gaming and worked on a play to earn game, and then eventually ended up in interoperability as the sort of the multi-chain world started exploding. So yeah, worked on a DEX aggregator or bridge
Wow.
aggregator, and then ultimately ended up in DeFi, because I realized after all this time that really, like, finance was the killer app, so to speak, of blockchain. There's
Yes.
all these other things like gaming and obviously infrastructure, L1s and L2s and stuff, but ultimately the power application of blockchain technology is finance, because it just democratizes everything, right? So
Right.
yeah, I mean, yeah, just got really into finance after, or into DeFi, I guess I should say, after DeFi summer, and then launched a few meme coins and projects here and there, and yeah, ultimately ended up with launching Ionic, that kind of brings all this knowledge together.
So that's a good segue into my next question. So there was a conscious decision that it seems like bubbled up into Ionic, but also you kind of made the decision there to start that on Mode and the Superchain, which we'll talk about more later. But can you talk a little bit about the Ionic specific creation story? How did it start? How did you end up on Mode, etc.?
Yeah, definitely. So as I was saying, I started off like on Ethereum, more or less. It was kind of like where we built all our products. So Ethereum was kind of the natural home for us, so to speak. So we ended up building a lending protocol on Ethereum, but obviously we weren't one of the first. So we're kind of always running behind, the big guys like Aave and Compound and stuff. So we never really got traction, and we couldn't really see the vision come to fruition the way we had envisioned it. So we ultimately kind of gave ourselves, some time to think about everything, and realized, okay, this is like, either we're gonna have something that really, finds product market fit and is used at scale, or it's just not really worth it.
Right.
So then when OP stacks started being a little bit more grown up and more established, and we started seeing, different chains launching, like Base and Lisk and other L2s on Optimism, we realized that potentially the new modular / multi-chain world was something that we could harness at the right time. And that's really when we met James, who was the founder of Mode, and who
Right.
had a very, very convincing narrative, right? It was obvious that, like, app chains were going to be the next thing, and then him bringing DeFi, or sort of making Mode the DeFi chain of the Optimism stack, just really resonated with us, especially because what I just said is, DeFi is really the top application of blockchain. So yeah, it resonated a lot with us, and then we just kind of put our put our experience to use again and helped him bootstrap that DeFi ecosystem on Mode.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Kind of staying here just a little bit more, it seems like you had a team of people that you had worked with before. Did you bring them with you when you started Ionic? Was there, how big were you? Worldwide distributed, I guess. So can you talk a little bit about your team and size in that initial kind of bootstrap period?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, currently Ionic is 8 people. We started off with 4, and yeah, you're right. This was kind of like the core crew that I built other projects with in the past.
Yep.
And we kind of just came together, and then we hired sort of like support on marketing and a support on the UI side of things and a support on DevOps. But ultimately, the core crew kind of came back together and just kept building just on a new chain and with a new project, right? So we were already kind of really well equipped in terms of what we needed to do and how we worked together, and like the whole operation side of things was just flawless. Just kind of moved over to the next
Right.
project, which really helped us bootstrap Ionic in the first place. And this is also why up to date we're really, we're really productive. Like we ship pretty fast. We get that quite a bit from community members. We have partnerships every week. We add new assets every week. We have big feature shipping every month or every other month. So yeah, we work quite well together. And I think also ultimately that's what kind of set us apart a bit in the Mode ecosystem, because some other teams didn't really bootstrap as well as we did. I mean, obviously we were an ecosystem partner of Mode, so it all kind of we were all kind of riding the same wave.
Sure.
But we fully really harnessed that energy and harnessed that momentum. So yeah, that's kind of how we got where we are now. I mean, right now we're deployed on 6 chains. We have over 30 different pools of yield bearing assets. We have a token out. We're on several dexes across different chains. We're just sort of our net is like wide and broad at this point. So we're not only on one chain on one dex, right? So yeah.
Right. Well, just thinking in terms of not necessarily crypto, but in finance, to have 4 or 8 people managing a couple 100 million in assets is, it's a testament to you guys and your professionalism and technical knowledge and things like that, but also as a harbinger for what crypto can do. With 8 people, you serve at least 50, 100, maybe more, 100,000 users, which is incredible, just incredible. And I would second that, being a kind of a long-term Ionic user. The professionalism of yourself, your moderators, everyone on the chain, feedback, things work, which is always nice, is great to see. So you guys have done a great job with that for sure. Um,
Thanks.
so
Thanks. That means
yeah,
a
you're
lot.
welcome. And it's true. It's not, we're not chilling anything here. It's true. We've used it for 6 months, and it all works great.
Nice.
Kind of moving on, as Ionic grew, I thought there were some. I mean, I'm new in this, so I thought these decisions were unusual, and just wanted to ask you about them. Um, you guys kept, I guess, borrow caps low, or basically there were times when you couldn't really borrow any more from Ionic because all the borrowing was sort of out. And I assume that was done to manage growth, to manage risk. Can you talk a little bit about that decision?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's 2 factors to this actually. So the first one is that the ecosystem on Mode, specifically at the beginning, was very slow. So
Yep.
supply liquidity was limited, which means we had a lot of borrowing demand, but not the supply to counter that. So ultimately, some people fell short of borrowing. But you
Hmm.
are right that that was further topped, I guess, or further yeah further put into practice by lower borrowing caps and more conservative
Yeah.
collateral caps. Yeah, just because we've seen it before, where that people just get greedy, right? So if you
Hmm.
have an ecosystem that is not ready for um, you know high velocity in the liquidity, it just becomes too risky. And early on as a project, you can't really take those risks. And yeah, I mean, everyone agreed in our advisory circles, and we have a bunch of risk assessment
Hmm.
professionals working with us. they all said you got to be careful on those collateral factors, because if something goes wrong, then potentially that's the end of the protocol. And with us being one of the biggest protocols on Mode, it might even mean the end of the chain at that point, right? So
Right.
yeah, there was just different factors that kind of came together that we really took it easy and didn't really want to go all out and play sort of like a pump and dump game where we want to make it as quickly as possible because in 6 months it might be over. But we took a more sort of like a longevity side or longevity view to it, and wanted to really build something durable and secure. And ultimately, I think there was a depeg of Renzo at some point. It wasn't a depeg. I think it was just a volatility issue.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember on some competitors, there was like 80 million liquidated, 40 million liquidated. And we actually didn't get half as much liquidations. I think we got like 400K of liquidations of people who were over leveraged. But ultimately, it really played off in the in the heat of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that makes sense. And in the same vein, and I'm guessing your answer will be similar, you also didn't and still don't allow lending and borrowing of the same asset. Was that for a similar reason, or was that to prevent people from gaming the airdrop, or what was that about?
Several reasons as well. Yeah, gaming the airdrop is one, because we just know how these bot farms operate, and try to
Yep.
game the system with any means possible. But also, yeah, just because it's too risky. 99% of all exploits of lending platforms come from Oracle exploits, or Oracle manipulation, I should say, right?
Wow.
Where
Okay.
there's a
Yep.
flash loan, and then basically create a bad loan or vacuum in price that then allows large liquidity providers to exploit the system. And yeah, ultimately we had to avoid getting exploited in any given way. So we definitely limited that, and we still do that to date, in fact. And there's also
Yep.
a lot of assets that we list now where we don't even enable borrowing at all, right? So
Hmm.
the only thing you can do is supply that asset and then borrow USDC against it, but you can't actually borrow the asset itself.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. Well, I like that. I like that. I like like you said, it's Ionic probably is still the largest protocol in Mode, and if something would go wrong, it could be the end of the chain. So
Yeah,
that's a
100%.
great thing.
Also, I mean, we really, we're the entire team is like pretty seasoned at this point, and we're all in our late 30s, and we're really not here to build something and launch a token and try to like exit at the first liquidity inflows. We've come to a point where like we realize, okay, this is really an opportunity to build something for the next 100 years, right? So
Yep.
when you approach a protocol like this, where like you're like, okay, yeah, there might be 4-year cycles and whatever, but ultimately this is a new way of doing business, a new way of managing liquidity. So let's build something for 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, because ultimately that's where the real reward will come in. It's kind of like the internet. The internet, there's
Yep.
this saying that like great technologies are always overestimated in the short term and underestimated in the long term. I feel like that's exactly that's exactly applicable to crypto and what we do. It's like everyone thinks that everything is going to go up only for like 10 years, when really the real transformation will come in a decade from now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you're probably a little too young to remember the 1999 to 2002 or so internet bubble, where it was, I tell my son this all the time, it was identical to now, where there were sky high expectations.
Hmm.
They all came back down, but now we're 2 decades later, and it's literally pervasive in every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where we're going with crypto. I believe that, and I'm not of your generation. I'm older, and I certainly believe that the traditional financial system is going to be severely disrupted. Maybe not this year, but certainly certainly in my lifetime. Put it that way.
Yeah, 100% agree. Definitely.
Um, so early on in Ionic, and I've asked this to a couple people, but you guys had a public sale. Um, I've talked to people that did that, and basically it was a lot of work for not a whole lot of reward. but the community got something out of it. The community wanted it. What's your take on that? Was that something you felt you had to do for the community? Was there a bigger purpose to that?
That's a really good question, actually, and that's something that I haven't actually talked about much, and no one's really asking about me
Yeah,
about this specifically. But I actually think about it quite a bit because I do
yeah,
think that it was kind of unnecessary, and I actually think it kind of hurt the protocol more than anything. Because what we've seen with these public sale buyers, I think it was from the Launchpad S1 at the time,
yep,
we actually, looking at the chart, at the beginning, in the first 2 months or 3 months, there was no one else that had tokens, right? So
mhm,
ultimately, that was the only liquidity that was on the market, and our liquidity pools at the time were also still very small because we hadn't built up any deep liquidity in our DEX LPs. And if you look at the chart now, the chart is down only for that period. Like it
mm,
literally sold 80%, right? Which means
yep,
all of these buyers just got their tokens and sold immediately. And it came from a place where we were like, okay, we're gonna, we want people to get in early and to kind of like, ride this with us and ultimately, make a gain with us and sort of, help the ecosystem grow and all kind of growing together. And it all came from a place of like compassion. But then
right,
to see how we got completely just, exploited really
right.
is really not the word. It's kind of a shame, to be honest. Yeah. So, I mean, from our point of view, I think it didn't really play out the way we wanted, and it was kind of a shame. So I don't think I would repeat it if I had another opportunity.
Yeah. Huh, that's interesting because my sense was there was a lot of like community hassle, and your moderators, had to answer a zillion questions, and it didn't always go smoothly. And now to hear the other side of it, the kind of the financial or whatever we're going to call the tokenite side, that also didn't work out how you want. So that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's also at the beginning. I mean, the people that are buying these tokens, they're only in it for the profit. Like it's obvious, right? None
yeah,
none of these people, bought the coin thinking, oh, I'm going to use the platform. I'm going to use these tokens to improve my liquidity situation on the platform, or help the platform grow for the next 3 years. Like none of these people approached it from. I mean, maybe a few, but the
right.
majority didn't really approach it from that kind of mindset, which is a shame, right? Because especially at the beginning, that's kind of what you need. You need people to understand what you're doing and to kind of help you execute on that vision, rather than just seeing a small gain and then trying to secure that.
Well, that's an interesting point because I mean, you didn't allow very big purchases, so it was always going to be a small gain. And here we are, I don't know how many months, but 4, 5, 6 months later, and there are opportunities for those same token, in some of the, particularly the pool that we'll talk about later on base, where you can make significant yield with very liquid returns. If they just would have held, they would have had that opportunity, I guess.
Oh yeah, exactly. That was kind of the idea, right? Is like
Yeah.
you can get a little bit, but that little bit is supposed to grow into a lot over time. As
Yes.
long as you participate and you utilize and you kind of, just play the game with the rest of us, basically.
Yes.
Because we were going to create opportunity for the holders and for that small bag that you purchased really cheaply at the beginning. So yeah, I mean, people just don't have the vision. It's like ultimately that's a big thing that is really bothering me in the in the industry, which has always been here. I mean, it's been here before, Ionic and before Mode and whatever.
Yeah.
It's extremely exploitative and it's extremely uh, mercenary, of an environment in crypto in general. I mean, just scams, 24/7, left, right, and center, wherever you look. So
Yeah.
I definitely got a few a few rugs and a few hacks, in my lifetime,
Yeah.
and it's
So,
just
so have I. In spite of Ben warning me continually, the rugs and hacks for novice users on my side of the table are there, and it's little bit of a steep learning curve, but if you believe in it, it's worth it. I think anyway.
yeah, I agree, definitely.
Um, so one of the things that happened with Ionic that I mean, I don't understand this that well. But several months ago, there was a big slug of, I guess it was MBTC come in a very short time order. Um,
Yep.
was that basically them approaching you? Was that something you thought you needed to provide more liquidity to the platform to grow quickly? Like, how does that all work on the back end? Because I'm guessing somebody just doesn't click and deposits, tens of millions of dollars without telling you guys first.
Yeah, so this was not actually an initiative that we kind of did at the beginning as a team, but it was a whale community that approached us and sort
Okay.
of, talked to us about potentially partnering up and, having a deeper relationship with them, sort of acquiring a lot of ION.
Hmm.
And obviously at the time, it was quite good for us and I think for them as well. And it's good to see that they're still there and the liquidity is still sticky, although we're 6 months
Yep.
later.
Yep.
So ultimately I would say, this is a good partnership that we kind of lined up. But I'm actually more excited to see what will happen now moving forward with veION because, obviously they understand it very well. Now we've worked closely together for 6 months. So yeah, now that we're releasing the veION and they're a major stakeholder, I think we'll see some very interesting dynamics emerge from that partnership.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'm glad you brought up VION. I want to get to that after this next segment, which is not so much focused on Ionic, but um, my background is in small organizations, growing small companies, and I'm fascinated to talk to founders that are going through this now. And the question I always like to ask is, what was the thing in managing the growth of Ionic that was hardest for you that you didn't expect? That's taken up, way more time than you ever thought it would.
That's actually a good question. I could give several answers to this, but I mean, yeah, I kind of came into the Ionic project with a few years of entrepreneurship behind
Hmm.
me. I kind of knew what I was coming into and the grind and just the 24/7 and the jumping from BD to marketing to engineering to product and back to fundraising and then back on calls, and so I kind of knew what was coming my way, and I enjoy it. I really live it. Like I live my best life doing this stuff.
Good for
So
you.
it wasn't really anything unexpected. But I think one of the most stressful things is definitely scaling in just such a competitive environment, right?
Mm,
Because ultimately,
yep.
this is extremely competitive. DeFi is extremely competitive. It's all about liquidity. It's all about having the right connections to the right partners and them truly kind of taking the time to really understand what you're doing and standing behind you.
Hmm.
It's just a huge challenge. Like it doesn't come easy. There's a lot of friends that I used to work with for other protocols, and they see us now and look at Ionic and think, wow, like, you know, uh, yeah, it's must be easy to run a lending protocol with on 4 chains with that kind of liquidity, but ultimately it's a lot harder. Yeah, than
Yep.
people think, and it's just ongoing. It's not like you get there and we basically, if you look at the product now, the product looks pretty much the same, or with some variations, but it's pretty much the same as 6 months ago, right? And I often get people being like, okay, what did you do for the last 6 months, because nothing's really changed. And that's just the point, I guess. That's hardest, is like to keep going constantly and
Yep.
consistently and just grind.
Gotcha. So, thinking about this, my background was in robotics in the early 2000s, and sort of no one had any clue what that meant. There was no, I live here in Pittsburgh, and there was a little bit of a, a support group there, but
Mhm.
not a lot. Now, where you're at, in your day to day life, not talking about these virtual meetings like we're on now, is there a group of people that you can talk with in person about crypto and about being a crypto founder and about growing, where you're located?
There are a few people. in my close circle of friends, but yeah, it's very limited. It's very limited. One thing that I actually, so I did an interview not too long ago where someone asked me about like being isolated as a founder, like
Yes.
because you are at the end of the day, you are just on your computer 24/7. Like there's no
Yes.
question about it. I'm not married. I don't have kids. So they're like, oh, you must be pretty isolated, right? And there is that part to it, I agree. But and early on, honestly, you don't really see it coming because you just don't know, right?
Right.
You like you don't even have the headspace to think, oh, maybe I should go out and stop being here by myself. And then ultimately, you just look back and you ask yourself, oh, what are you even doing with your life? Why are you sitting on your couch 24/7 doing nothing other than staring at the computer? So
Yes.
there's definitely that element to it, but I feel like now I've kind of come to uh, consciously sort of counteract that. So I have a group
That's
of
good.
friends here, in real life where we talk a lot about this. Actually, my co-founder also lives in the same city than I do.
Okay.
And without disclosing the location, the city that we live in is very crypto forward.
Good.
So yeah, it's definitely a lot easier here than somewhere in the middle of nowhere in
Right.
Europe or somewhere else. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to hear because it sounds like obviously you are seasoned at this. There's more to it than 24/7 in front of your computer, at least in the long term. If, like you said, if you're building a 10, 20, 100, 200-year company, it's a marathon that, you have to take some breaks with your friends and bounce ideas off them and not be completely introspective and miss what's going on around you in the world. So that's great to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so you mentioned earlier that people say, well, the interface looks the same on Ionic in 6 months. My next comment actually was, at least I personally have noticed, continual upgrades in both the interface and what you offer. And one thing I wanted to ask about that I think is, I have some experience with using this. It's really slick. Is the ability to do multiple tasks from with what it seems to be within the Ionic interface, bridging to base, LPing, things like that. I don't see that a lot. And is that something that's new, something that you guys want to keep pushing forward?
Yeah. I mean, the trained eye will definitely see the updates that we do. I
Yep.
think people who come to the platform and don't see a difference in the last 6 months definitely aren't a trained eye, because we
Yep.
are shipping constantly and we are updating and we are refining and we are adding new assets and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, the work is constant. But
Yep.
to your point of sort of having more functionality in one app rather than having to use several, it's just
Correct.
really a result of us using crypto for that many years, right? I remember like trying to buy Bitcoin in 2016 was like an ordeal. Like I had to fly to a different city with cash in my suitcase basically to try to buy the Bitcoin, right? So
Wow.
it was extremely difficult to get your hands on any kind of crypto. And ultimately now we're like almost 10 years later, and
Yep.
I would say that only in the last 2 years really has it become easier.
Hmm.
And we all have history or experience or past in using different applications, using different chains. Like I said, we used to work in interoperability and sort of on different chains, and we just understand like what are the pain points that inhibit liquidity from flowing to your application, really is what it is. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to unlock all these little hacks so that people can easily bridge and can easily bring liquidity and can easily take the rewards outside of our little application or our little use case specifically, to then do more with the assets, right? And I think that's kind of where
Yep.
the space is going towards. I hear a lot more now about aggregation. I hear a lot more about abstraction, right? There's new wallet types now that
Yep.
you log in with your email, and ultimately there's a lot of apps now similar to Ionic that just completely abstract all of this away, where you just you use one token and that can just easily bridge from chain to chain to ecosystem. And yeah, I think aggregation is a big narrative, and I think we're just going to see more and more of this.
So that
I talked to James earlier from Mode, and they're now trying to go all in on the AIFi
Yep.
narrative, or kind of vision, and it makes complete sense. People don't want to know if they're using Ionic or if they're using Aave or Compound, and if it's on ETH or if it's on Mode or if it's on Base, right? Ultimately, what they want is, they want the Apple experience. It's like one click and
Right.
the best offering, right? And yeah, that's just kind of what we're trying to do to offer to our users.
So that's a perfect lead into what I wrote down and what I was thinking about, and that is, um, you guys are now live on 4 markets, and in the app, I see several more that are kind of grayed out that I assume are coming, and that's incredible. You have tons of assets on board it. Um, but on the super chain, there's this notion of, I guess, wallet and asset abstraction, where kind of it seems what's coming is any asset on any chain can be used by an app on any other chain. I'm not exactly sure that's the right way to describe it, but it seems like this transparency to users is getting more and more and more. And how does that relate to the need to deploy in multiple chains if it doesn't matter where your assets are?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting take. So I
Yeah.
think what you're referring to is the OP Stack interoperability module, which is the native
Yes.
interoperability infrastructure of OP Stack. And we're actually working really closely with the team at Optimism to be one of the teams that is sort of the most ready for when it launches.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I agree. It is an interesting concept. We've seen similar things with the Omni fungible token, I think it's called, from Layer
Yeah.
Zero, ERC20 from Connext in the days. So just tokens that are sort of fungible across different ecosystems and different chains. And I think it makes total sense. However, we are so deep in this space at this point that for us it makes a lot of sense, but the user base is not yet educated enough to understand what that even means. I say this because we launched a meme coin about 2 years ago that was supposed to be the first omni-chain meme coin. I think it was one of the first ERC20 meme coins ever to exist. So truly the first omni-chain meme coin. And while people were extremely bullish on this thesis 2 years ago, ultimately the project didn't make it, just because no one really understood what that even meant. So
Yeah.
people are still a bit behind. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, if this really comes to fruition, the full way, like they're envisioning it,
Yep.
it could mean that, like, you wouldn't have to build your app on different chains anymore, and you can just build it on one chain, and the liquidity can just flow to you, as if the entire ecosystem is just one big super chain, right? And I think that's kind of
Right.
like what they have in mind, and that's kind of what they're trying to do. But yeah, it will definitely still be some time out. At the same
Yep.
time, too, there is another thing to mention here, is that some chains keep assets only on their chain for a reason, right? So I'm thinking for Fraxtal, for instance. Fraxtal
Hmm.
is its own chain, it's its own ecosystem around the Frax stablecoin,
Yep.
and we have their own ETH derivatives and yield-bearing stablecoins under the Frax brand, right? So
Right.
for them, for instance, it wouldn't really make sense to take these assets and go, to another chain or to another app, right? For
Right.
them, it would make more sense to get the liquidity to come to them. And in that sense, there are some assets that will never leave their native ecosystem.
That makes sense. I really hadn't thought of that about that, but now that you mentioned that, if I click on the Frax button in the Ionic app, that's what I see. It's Frax this, Frax that. So, that makes a lot of sense. And it's certainly, I think you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how all this pans out when, quote, the naive users start to use this. I mean, you and I can talk. We have different depths, but definitely some familiarity with crypto. When the person that just wants the best yield comes online, that, I guess, is going to be the answer to see where all this goes. Um,
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah.
so you mentioned this earlier, and I talked with James at Mode and absolutely love the roadmap for AI. I'm a skeptic at heart on that, but I think the pathway is one that's very good, very safe. Um, Are you guys doing anything specific to take advantage of AI? Do you guys have to change your interfaces at all to adapt them to use AI? Or are you guys in a good spot just to be, the lending provider across the super chain, no matter if it's AI or not?
Yeah, I'm actually glad that you asked this question, because this is something that we've thought about a lot and debated a lot in the last few weeks internally. It is true that we're in a unique position to sort of align more with the Mode vision of AIFi. And
Okay.
obviously, we're really close to James, so we're really close to all the partners, and sort of we
Hmm.
we have almost a leg up in that scenario. So I think for us as a team, it does make sense to go down that path. And like you say, it's very safe, it's very predictable that that will play out in some way. So yes, definitely. I mean, we are currently sort of brainstorming and conceptualizing about how we would use it, because there's different ways to use it for Ionic specifically. So yeah, we're just trying to find, okay, what's actually feasible? How do we actually do it? How do we sequence it? Who are the target markets for this? Um, so yeah, I mean, it's definitely, we're thinking about it every day, all the time. I can't give
Hmm.
away too much alpha because it is somewhat of a competitive edge at this point.
That's fine.
But,
I was
yeah.
I was kind of setting the hook there to see if you would drop anything, but that I understand completely.
But
Um,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be done. The thing is, we really understand lending at this point, so we have the data that we need to train the models, and we know
yep.
what results we want, right? So having these two is already half of the way, right? All we need to
Right.
do is basically execute on it.
Yep.
So yeah, we're pretty bullish on the whole AIFi narrative.
All right. Well, once it launches in full, we'll come back again and talk, and then you can tell me what you couldn't tell me. So that's fine.
There we
Um,
go. Okay, let's do it.
yeah. So last thing here. Let's get to the good stuff. Maybe the future and VE Ion. The Ion token's out. I've been extremely pleased with my use of it. But it seems like there's a lot more coming. I'm going to just turn the floor over to you a little bit to talk about VE Ion and where that's going.
Yeah, sure. I mean, veION is definitely the biggest thing we have going on at the moment, and has been for some time now.
Yep.
We are all power users of Aerodrome on base,
Hmm.
and we have been for a while for different projects. And we just realize, and recognize this is a great way of really, truly incentivizing economic activity on a blockchain.
Yep.
So we are, we went back and kind of figured out, okay, how do we do this for lending? Does it even make sense for lending? Is there, are there any things that we can add to a VE DEX like Velodrome or Aerodrome that makes them complementary, right, in an
Hmm.
ecosystem? And yeah, we realized that there is, and it would just make a lot of sense. So we went back to the drawing board. We designed the whole system up from scratch, based and inspired by the VE stuff, and ultimately the solidly code from Andre Kronia.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it took us a while, but we're almost there. So code is almost built, going into audit soon, and we're extremely pleased at launching it. We have a bunch of partners lined up for launch partners. We'll be running different campaigns for it. And ultimately, it will just benefit everyone. It will benefit the ecosystem, the liquidity providers, so the users, the farmers, and the protocols, and us, the protocol at the core. So yeah, there's a lot of cool dynamics that emerge. I don't know how much James has told you about VE Mode, but they're
Yep.
also working something really exciting there. So there will be some really cool dynamics emerging soon, which will be basically layering V vote escrow tokenomics. So if you think this
Hmm.
through, like, on a chain like Mode, right, you'd have like the VE DEX, right? So you'd have like VE Velo, and then you'd have the VE model at the base layer, on chain layer, which is VE Mode, and then you have the lending layer, which is VE Ion, right? So you could start to stack 3 vote escrow layers of yield into one strategy, and that's never really been seen before, right? So I really think that this will be something groundbreaking that we're building here. And yeah, ultimately, it should just for Ionic specifically, it should just result in really happy community, much more utilization across the platform, and just kind of act as like a liquidity vortex. right? Where
Yep.
protocols will understand that by using veION, they can acquire more protocol-owned liquidity for their own treasuries, and ultimately that
Mhm.
benefits everyone. There's a
Yep.
saying that is, if you can build something that benefits all three participants in the equation, so kind of like a trifecta
Yep.
of sort of velocity, then you found the formula that works. And I think we found that formula that benefits these three participants. So yeah, pumped about this.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that the trifecta of the Velo, the Mode, and the Ionic VE tokens. I got to wrap my head around that a little more, but that sounds
Yeah,
great. Um, I wanted you mentioned something, and it sparked the old coder in me. So you mentioned you got the VE code from Andre. Is that's his name, right? Andre? Yes. Um, h-
yeah. So
how
so
does
he was, yeah. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I assume you just forked it, you took it. How, tell me about the like technical details of taking a fork of code, taking someone else's code that's available publicly and making it work for you. I mean, I know nothing about Solidity, but it seems like it's more than just cut and paste, ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for matter of fact, we weren't even able to copy paste or to fork his code. Andre was sort of the founding father of this
Right.
concept, of sort of having
Yes.
different participants to interact with each other, and it's ultimately it's an economic formula, right?
Right.
That just got put into code, but yeah, we had to basically analyze how it worked and use it extensively, like I said before, on Aerodrome and other dexes to sort of really get to the bottom of it, like get to the bottom
Yep.
of how you use it, how you scale it, what might be wrong with it, how not to use it,
Mm,
right? Really have some trial and error with this, and we have had this for a couple of years now. But yeah, ultimately we had to understand the concept fully of what was going on,
right.
then take the code and look at the code in detail about, okay, what actual functions do what, and what else could they do or what else shouldn't they do,
Right.
and then try to adapt it to a new app, right? Because he built it for an AMM,
Right.
right? He built it
Right.
for a DEX, and we're not a DEX. We're a lending protocol. We're a money market. So there's some different dynamics here. There's just different efficiencies and different beneficiaries.
Right.
So yeah, we just had to take that model and try to adapt it, try to mold it, and then yeah, we basically coded it up from scratch again. So uh, yeah,
S-
kind of
I
kind of
love
kind of like state of the art at this point.
I love that. I've always said, and when I was back in grad school and just out, at some point you just need to throw all the old code away because you understand it so well, and then build it back better
Yeah,
with the specifics for your situation. Get rid of all the inefficiencies that build up because that happens. Code creep happens. So
yeah.
that's I mean, for me, that's very interesting to hear, and I appreciate you taking the time to go into that detail.
Yeah, it's also it's ultimately where innovation lives, right? It's so
Right,
many people have taken the code and just copy pasted it and slapped their logo on it on a new chain. I mean, there's lots of VE forks, on different chains. But actually taking it back and then trying to innovate on what is there is kind of like where we got the kick, right? And this is kind of
right.
what we really like. This is why we're so passionate about it more than trying to fork something. Yeah.
So the next step of that is you guys have developed, I think, something novel and new with your set of code. There's it seems like there's no way to protect that novelty, right? Because it becomes part of the public domain. Is that something you guys understand going in? Let me put it this way: you guys have put a lot of work into something that everyone's going to see and everyone can take. Is that just the cost of doing business?
Yeah, ultimately I think so. And
Okay,
ultimately I think having something that is, not public and for people not to fork it is kind of against the ethos of crypto, to be honest, and
right,
decentralization and like open networks.
and
Um,
trust.
yeah, and trust.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's if someone wants to go out and copy paste it and build it on a new brand on a new chain and ends up becoming really successful, then that's better for everyone. So we would be really happy if someone tried to do that. Like, we're not protective. We don't, we're not going to license the code, and
Mhm.
we're not going to be out there trying to license the code,
Yep.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that's, I hear the same thing from everyone we've talked to. And that's, it's sort of weird for me because that's not how I grew up, but it's also a breath of fresh air that there's more to it. We're gonna it's a community owned asset. And if someone else can make it better, great. And if we can continue pushing it forward, that's even better for all of us. So that's
Yeah.
awesome to hear. Um,
Yeah,
so
there's also like a saying that innovation in general is just stifled by this kind of like uh, keeping things secret and trying to own something and not sharing it with the community and not sharing it for innovation. It's just, we're not going to get anywhere like that. So yeah.
right. That's awesome. Um, well, that's sort of all the formal questions I had. I just want to open the floor. Is there any alpha you want to give out? Anything about Ionic you want to talk about? The floor is yours.
Yeah, maybe I can drop a few hints here.
Yeah, just
One
hints. That's more fun.
yeah, one fun feature that I'm really excited about that we're just developing right now is to manage your positions more easily. So we've seen similar things on Aave and other competitors. We are developing a collateral swap feature, which basically means you don't have to pay back your loan to swap your collateral. So you're saving extremely on transaction costs, and
Hmm,
you're also able to manage your positions much easier if you don't have the asset required to manage your position. So I'm
very
really
good.
excited about that feature coming out. We're
Cool.
just wrapping this up.
Yep.
Um, And then, no, I mean, the majority of stuff that's in the pipeline is kind of like the AIFi
Yep.
situation that I can't really go into. The veION stuff obviously is coming
Yep.
out soon, so people should get really excited about that, and position accordingly is what I like to say. Because
Yep.
once that's out, the flywheel, especially at the beginning, is going to be extremely profitable. So
Right.
people should definitely be on the lookout for that. Um, yeah, no, and then other than that, I mean, I just want to say to everyone who's watching this, either if you are using Ionic or if you haven't yet, you guys should definitely join us in Discord and join our power users and just kind of come hang with the team and try to help us make the product better and use us to help you not to get liquidated or lose your funds, because we're here to watch out for everyone, and yeah, hopefully we can all grow together.
Absolutely. Well, Riz, thank you so very much. Appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk again soon.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on again. It was a nice interview, and thank you again so much for all the other work that you guys have done for us. It was really good and great experience. So yeah, always happy to collab with you guys. Thank you.